Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. A disabled millionaire drowned in front of everyone, until a cleaning lady did what no one dared to do. At the Ivanovs' vast, secluded estate, nestled on the shores of Lake Ladoga, the chilly spring air carried the hushed murmurs of a social gathering. The large white stone mansion stood proudly on the shore, surrounded by ancient pine and birch trees, their silvery trunks reflected by the dark surface of the lake. Inside, under dim, golden lighting, guests milled about in elegant gowns and tailored suits, drinking vintage champagne and exchanging polite, often empty words. Dmitry Ivanov, master of the house and influential businessman, was hosting that evening as usual. His face, thin and marked by a few premature wrinkles, bore the imprint of implacable determination. Since the car accident that confined him to an electric wheelchair 5 years ago, Dmitry had lost none of his authority. While his body had given way, his mind remained sharp as a blade. He was still the feared man, capable of bringing empires to their knees with a simple command. That evening, a dozen hand-picked guests were present, businessmen, politicians, and other influential figures from Moscow. All had come to experience power and wealth firsthand. Yet, despite the smiles and feigned laughter, the glances exchanged behind crystal glasses betrayed a mixture of indifference and incomprehension at Dmitry's new condition. He was now this wheelchair-bound, dependent billionaire, and this seemed, in the eyes of many, to diminish his aura. Among the guests stood Natalia, his young wife, a woman of cold, distant beauty, whose piercing eyes seemed to size up each person present. Her smile, as rare as it was calculated, masked an ambition as keen as her husband's. At her side, Igor Petrov, Dmitry's right-hand man, scanned the room with a mixture of expectation and calculation, always on the lookout for the slightest weakness or opportunity to strengthen his own power in the shadow of his boss. Conversation was in full swing in the large living room adorned with Persian rugs and modern art. But behind the words and jokes, the atmosphere remained heavy, almost icy. Dmitry listened, his hands on the controls of his electric wheelchair, his gaze often lost in space. At one point, Dmitry asked to leave. He wanted to be alone, by the lake, to think, away from the pretenses of the evening. Igor immediately approached to help him, ever vigilant. Together, they crossed the large bay window onto the wooden deck overlooking the lake. The wind had picked up, rustling the leaves on the trees and stirring the dark surface of the water. The wooden pontoon, old but sturdy, extended like a finger toward the vastness of the lake. Dmitry glided slowly onto it, guided by Igor, his wheelchair rolling silently. But halfway there, a sharp crack pierced the silence. A plank of the pontoon, worn by years and weather, suddenly gave way beneath the wheelchair's rear wheel. In a split second, everything tipped over. The wheelchair and Dmitry were thrown into the icy waters of the lake. A dull crash, splashes, then a stifling silence. Inside the villa, the guests froze, petrified, their wide eyes staring at the dark surface of the lake into which Dmitry was slowly disappearing. None of them moved. Fear, surprise, or perhaps simple cowardice paralyzed them. Only Dmitry's hands desperately searched for a foothold, clawing at the edge of the dock in a frantic effort to avoid being swallowed up. His breath was coming short, his head intermittently disappearing underwater, and yet no help came. The lake, vast and implacable, seemed to slowly claim its prey. Behind the silent and often invisible scenes of the Ivanov estate, Anna Petrova carried out her work with discreet rigor. A housekeeper for over 10 years, Anna was known for her loyalty and quiet devotion. Small in stature, almost fragile at first glance, she nevertheless exuded an unsuspected inner strength. Born in a remote village in the Novgorod region, Anna grew up amidst thick forests and frozen lakes, in a modest family where every day was a struggle. From an early age, she learned resilience and simplicity, cultivating a quiet courage forged by a harsh life. The elegant, closed world of the Ivanovs was foreign to her, and the looks she received were often ones of contempt or indifference. That evening, as the party was in full swing inside the grand mansion, a muffled scream ripped through the air, followed by a heavy silence. Without thinking, Anna rushed to the bay window overlooking the lake. Her quick footsteps echoed on the wooden floor as she watched the guests stand frozen, their faces fixed in an expression of fear mixed with disbelief. "It's none of your business. Go away," one of the women whispered coldly, while a man nodded condescendingly. But Anna wasn't one to be intimidated by whispers or haughty looks. She knew every second counted. With a quick movement, she kicked off her heels, letting them fall with a dull thud to the floor. Then, with a quick movement, she hitched up her skirt, revealing slender but muscular legs, forged by years of hard work. Without waiting for anyone's help, she stepped onto the slippery pontoon under the pale moonlight and, with a fluid plunge, disappeared into the icy waters of Lake Ladoga. The shock of the cold immediately seized her, biting her skin with an almost painful violence. But she didn't think about the cold or the fear that gripped her. She focused only on the objective, finding Dmitri. The opaque water enveloped him, suffocating, and the millionaire's head emerged from time to time, tossed by the waves. Anna moved forward, her strong arms cutting through the water, her breathing rapid but controlled. When she reached Dmitri, her hands closed tightly around his inert body. He was cold, his movements weak, almost absent. Yet Anna felt beneath her fingers the life still present, fragile but tenacious. With strength she didn't know she possessed, she pulled Dmitri toward the surface, struggling against the weight of his body and the paralyzing cold. Each movement was a victory against fate. Arriving near the pontoon, she clung to the wood and, panting, finally emerged with Dmitri. Trembling, her hair plastered to her face, she shouted, "Help! Someone help me!" The guests, as if awakened from a dream, finally began to move. Igor was the first to react, rushing with two other men to help pull Dmitri out of the water. Natalia, livid, watched the scene, unable to utter a word, her face frozen with fear and shock. When Dmitri opened his eyes, his heavy eyelids slowly parted. His gaze, usually hard and impenetrable, met Anna's. In that fragile moment, a glimmer of humanity, almost lost, shone in his tired eyes. This silent look was like recognition, a silent word that crossed pride and distance to finally rest on the one who had dared to brave the cold and the judgments to reach out to him. In the days following this shocking episode, an imperceptible change took hold of the large Ivanov mansion. Dmitri, usually distant, almost inaccessible, was initially surprised by his own emotions. The fall into the lake, the fear of death, and above all Anna's unexpected gesture seemed to have awakened in him a part of humanity he had repressed for too long. One morning, as Anna walked as usual through the vast marble corridors, a calm but firm voice called out to her from Dmitri's office. "Anna, could you come for a moment?" Intrigued and a little hesitant, she entered the room. Dmitri, sitting in his wheelchair, was looking at her with a new intensity. There was no longer that usual coldness in his eyes, but a rare vulnerability. I wanted to talk to you." He paused, searching for words. "For the past few years, I've been living in a bubble. I've isolated myself, locked away in my silence and my anger. This wheelchair, it's taken away more than my mobility. It's deprived me of human contact, of real contact. With you, it's different." Anna, surprised, felt a shiver run down her spine. This Dmitri, broken but sincere, was completely foreign to her. She answered simply, her voice soft but firm. "Mr. Ivanov, I'm just an ordinary woman, born far away, with very little. But I believe that no one is doomed to remain alone, no matter what life takes away from them. I, too, have dreams I've never been able to realize, hopes sometimes stifled by reality. But I fight every day." This conversation was the beginning of an unexpected rapprochement. Dmitri listened, sometimes moved, sometimes thoughtful. He discovered in Anna a quiet strength, a courage that had nothing to do with power or money, but with dignity and the will to continue, no matter the cost. Gradually, he offered her a new role, no longer just a housekeeper, but a personal assistant. Not only for her practical skills, managing appointments, organizing her travel, helping her with her paperwork, but also for her calming presence, her ability to give her a human lease on life. The once cold and impersonal house seemed to change atmosphere. The walls seemed to breathe a new, warmer air. Even the guests, accustomed to superficial socializing, noticed that Dmitri was no longer just the inaccessible millionaire in a wheelchair. They now saw a man who had regained his dignity, thanks to a woman from a very different world. The conversations became more sincere. Dmitri could sometimes be heard laughing softly, a rare sound that surprised those close to him. Natalia, his young wife, watched this change with suspicion tinged with incomprehension, unable to grasp the simple yet profound bond that now united her husband and Anna. Igor, however, frowned, suspecting a threat to his influence. But in Moscow, Anna and Dmitri's story soon spread. In the corridors of posh buildings, in crowded cafes, this story became a symbol that true strength lies not in titles or fortune, but in the courage not to look away, in the ability to act when everyone else remains frozen. Anna, the modest woman with simple origins, and Dmitri, the powerful man who had fallen from his pedestal, had together broken the silence of indifference. Their unexpected bond reminded everyone that humanity sometimes hides where we least expect it, and that it can be reborn when we reach out instead of judging.